All right, Saints fans and who-dats from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Network. I'm here presenting the Bayou Blitz with Mr. Bob Rose. What's going on, Bob?
Not a lot at all, Kyle. How are you tonight?
Doing well, my friend.
Good, good. We do appreciate all of our listeners and supporters. Mr. Mosley and myself, we just needed a little bit of a mental and physical break for the last couple of weeks. We thought that the players get a little bit of a short break between OTAs and training camp, so we thought we'd take ours a little bit early. But we are back stronger than ever, technical difficulties aside, and we're excited to get moving on towards training camp. Obviously, our Saints have been a little bit quiet in the news, as have most NFL teams. But Kyle, as I know you know, the big news out of the day from New Orleans came with the 3-year contract extension of one of the team's greats, defensive end Cam Jordan. How excited were you to see that?
Well, pretty pumped up because no one on the Saints team other than possibly Michael Johnson, but being at the length of his career, what he's done for the franchise, and just being the consummate pro, I was happy to see him. And when I looked at the photos today of he and his family there when he was signing, he had his 3 kids and his wife there. It was just excellent to see because Cam Jordan, I mean, we can't really complain. He's done everything we have asked him to do. He's been a great number 1 pick for the Saints. He's been the leader on their defense, right? And he's really just been that person who, when we need to have some sound judgment out there with the media, he's there giving his take on important issues with the Saints as well as with the league. So, I mean, you can't have any better scenario. And I believe what Mickey Loomis was able to do was really to help and position the Saints in attacking some of these other contracts, which are coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I kind of double up on what you were saying about what Cam means to not only this particular New Orleans Saints team, but the history of the Saints franchise, I'll jump on kind of what you said last about the contracts and the big contracts coming up. Mark Ingram departed this offseason as a free agent to the Baltimore Ravens, as we all know. Mark was an extremely popular figure within that locker room, a lot of very, very close friends. He was the number 1 draft choice along with Cam that came to the team in 2011, and Mark certainly distinguished himself very well throughout his Saints career. But when that kind of thing happens, when a veteran departs like that, still pretty much in his prime, that can we've seen it with other teams anyway, that can sometimes cause a little bit of discord in that team's locker room, because the veteran leadership in particular might start to feel that, you know what, this team isn't, this front office, this franchise, they don't have my back. You know, what's going to happen when my contract comes up? I deserve to be paid, especially if you're playing well like Mark and Cam have throughout their careers. So I think with the number of huge contracts that they have coming up, Michael Thomas being the most notable one by far for next year, and then Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Demario Davis, among a handful of others the year after that. This Jordan signing sends a trickle down through the locker room of, you know what, Gail Benson and the rest of that front office. You know what, guys, you've been important to this franchise and what we're trying to accomplish. So yes, we are going to take care of you. So I think that sends a ripple of good harmony throughout this locker room, which certainly bodes well coming into the 2019 season.
Hey, you guys. Quinn R here. Just jumping in on it with you.
Hey, Quinn.
Well,
how are
hey,
you?
Quinn.
How you guys doing?
Really good. Thank you for taking some time out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Quinn, and you've been through this situation a couple of times in your career. I don't know if you had heard what Kyle and I were talking about. Having been on that side of it yourself as a player, and you've seen good friends come and go. How do you feel about the Cam signing, and what's that do for the Saints locker room?
Well, I think with regards to how it affects the locker room, I think each scenario is different, right? So, in other words, let's say you have a player who's been a good player, a great locker room guy, things like that. Sometimes the terms just don't match up. What they want in relation to what the team is willing to give. And to me, that's just business. And I think we all as players realize that. So I think from that aspect, guys don't get too salty about it. Now, on the other side of the coin, there are scenarios where a guy might be one of your best players. He might be one of the best players in the league, but somehow the team is trying to screw them over. That's when everybody can see that and they go, man, if they're treating this guy like that, then what's going to happen when my contract is up? So I think each situation is just different. So and I'm not exactly sure the details of what happened with regards to with Ingram.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And they have been any reports that have come out from either side have been a little bit sketchy. But You're right. I do agree with you. I think at the end of the day, most players do understand that it's a business. And the Saints moved on. They stepped away from the Ingram negotiations and wound up, giving a contract. I believe it was a 2-year contract to Latavius Murray, worth about the same terms as what Mark had agreed with ultimately with Baltimore.
Right.
Now, where do you see, I know you still follow the Saints extremely closely. Where do you see Cam Jordan as it stands right now, his place in Saints history? Because just a week before, we saw two of the greats, Marcus Colston and Reggie Bush, get inducted into the team's Hall of Fame. Does Cam already belong among those great names in franchise history?
I think so. He's been an extremely amazing player for them. He's just a cornerstone, on the defense. And absolutely, he's definitely a future Hall of Famer with that organization.
Oh, excellent. One thing that I wanted to pick your brain about, Quinn, this 2019 Saints team, as we all know, they've come off 2 heartbreaking playoff losses. And the team as a whole, the core of the team outside of Mr. Breeze is still extremely young. But do you see them kind of at a crossroads right now as far as their championship window? And if they don't get this thing done in the next year or two, maybe the front office moves on with some of these big contracts coming up. I asked because you were kind of sitting in the same place. You were a part of some great Saints teams, playoff runs in 91 and 92, and then the defense in particular. You built up on the offensive side of the ball, but the defense in particular, we started to see some defections and players moving on. Do you see that kind of thing happening if this New Orleans Saints group doesn't charge through that championship window?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think there's a 2-year window, and again, and I'm not saying that he'll be done, but Drew's is getting up there, and I know that he's hungry, and I know that he's looking for a championship. And to me, they're the front runner in the NFC. I mean, they're the best team in the NFC going in. I think they had some good draft picks. I think that they, did some good signings. They really needed a tight end. They got one. So I see them making it, into the championship game and probably making it into the Super Bowl this upcoming year. Now, to me, over the last 2 years, I know with the controversial plays and things like that, but, in football, you can't leave any room for the refs to make a mistake. So the key is going to be for them to win and win handedly and not leave it in the referee's hands and just go get it. But I think there's a 2-year window. It's my opinion.
Do you see any glaring weaknesses on this Saints team? I mean, we know, they were very focused and succinct in the off-season moves that they made, both free agency and the draft. You mentioned bringing in Jared Cook, the tight end, to fill a huge void. Then they turned around and drafted Eric McCoy, to fill the sizable shoes of Mr. Max Unger, who retired. Do you see, when you look down this Saints roster, outside of the almighty injury bug, of course, do you see any areas that kind of concern you going into this season?
No, I think they've done a good job of trying to fulfill their needs, and so I think that they're going to be pretty strong. Now on paper, especially with the draft picks and things like that, on paper it's strong, but it always remains to be seen when young players especially get out there and it's a different league. Because, you could be great in college and then horrible in the NFL. You could be average in college and be awesome in the NFL. So that remains to be seen. But going in, they look like they have a pretty strong roster this year.
Oh, no question about it. And as we know, all the NFL teams are going through their OTAs right now. Describe what it was for you as a player. Now, you, of course, came in with the San Diego Chargers, but you were a pretty high draft pick after being an extremely productive receiver at Iowa. Talk to us about the immediate differences that you noticed between the college and the pro game, and what OTAs were like for you as a young player.
So as a college player, there's a lot more teaching. And what I mean is, like, let's say, for example, me playing wide receiver, there's a lot more teaching of the nuances on how to run routes, elbows tucked in, shoulders over the knees, just all the little things that you are taught as a college player. When you get into the NFL, that stuff should already just be known. You're basically, there's install, you learn the plays, you go out onto the field, you huddle up, they call the play, and either you can do it or you can't. So coming out of college, you have to already know how to read a defense. Is it zone? Is it man? Is it, you know what I mean? Is it a bracket coverage? Things like that. So that's the difference there. So there's a lot more attention to detail and being able to adapt, learn the system, and be able to execute it right off the bat. A lot of times that's the difference between guys who are going to make it and not, because everybody's skilled, everybody's fast, everybody can jump, everybody's strong. It's the guys who can consistently do it right. Those are the guys that are going to be around. So that's what it's going to take for these young players to be able to step in and play right off the bat.
Hey, that's a great point. And you know what, Quinn, last time we had you on the show, and by the way, it's been too long, I think we were just coming into the off season, and you were talking to us about some of the good things that you saw out of Traquan Smith and Keith Kirkwood, who were coming off of their rookie years. Did you see a big jump for them? Not so much in production, but especially consistency coming into year two?
I do. I think that, there's a big difference between your rookie year and your second year, because now you know all the protocol, you know what it takes, you know the work ethic, you know what's expected of you. So this can be a make or break year for a lot of players. So I think, like I said, those guys are talented. I think if they work extremely hard, if they're doing the things that they need to do during the off season, then come regular season, they're going to be that much better.
Does the fact that Sean Payton and the Saints front office, does the fact that they did not add a wide receiver in the draft or through free agency, does that tell you that the coaching staff has quite a bit of confidence in the receivers that are already in that room?
Absolutely. I think there were a lot more glaring needs, and I think that they met those needs, and I think that they have confidence in those guys. So we'll see, but I think that it's a pretty good group, especially, when you're out there day after day and you're watching these players. You're like, okay, this guy can get it done. So I think that they're going to be all set, and hopefully that receiving corps can have a big year.
Now, how would you go about when you were a player and once you were in the league for a couple of years? How would you go about mentoring a younger receiver that came in? What would be the first couple of things you would sit down with a young man?
The biggest thing I would always tell them is don't get caught up in the money, and don't get caught up in, other guys partying, going out, trying to have a good time and all this stuff. It's all about, why are you here? You're here to play football and be productive. And what are you going to do to stay? Because it's one thing to get drafted into the league. It's another thing to last in the league. And a lot of times the difference is your focus. Some guys lose focus when they have $1 million in their pocket and they've never had, the shiny new car and everybody looking at them and they're some kind of hero. It's a temptation to lose that focus. But I would always tell them, work hard and work first. Once you have success, enjoy yourself a little bit, but always keep that work in mind. So spend extra time in the weight room. You look at players, and I did this too, but you look at players like a Peyton Manning and his reputation of being the first one into the locker room, the last one to leave, work harder than everybody else. Because listen, I wasn't the most talented, but nobody worked harder than me. And that helped me to last as long as I did in the league. So those are some of the things that I would tell the young players.
With the longevity that you had and success that you had, with the New Orleans Saints in particular, do you think too much about, and again, I'll go back to Cole, Marcus and Reggie just being inducted into the Team Hall of Fame. Do you think your numbers should put you in that as well?
Well, I'm not going to say that. It would be an extreme honor. It would be very much an honor to be put into the Hall of Fame. I just wish that I would have had a couple more years there. I wanted to stay. When I left for the Bills, it just didn't work out. But if that's something that was, bestowed upon me, I would be extremely appreciative. But I don't expect it. I just plug along and I work hard and just enjoy life. And like I said, if it was to happen, I'd be extremely honored.
Well, and I guess I'll toot your horn for you. I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of all of ours, Alan Ulrich, on Under the Dome last night, and we talked about your numbers. You're in the top 10 franchise history in receptions, yardage, and touchdowns. So we personally believe that you deserve a shot there.
Oh man!
But we're starting. Oh, definitely. You were such a pleasure to watch on the field. I know you have said numerous times, outside of this show and on this show, that you were sorry to see your time as a Saint come to an end. You weren't the only one, my friend. Many of us feel the same way.
Thank you. But once a Saint, always a Saint, though.
I've noticed that. Do you have any trips planned for New Orleans this upcoming season?
Yeah, I plan to do, as you guys know, I raise money for Alzheimer's, and so I plan to do a walk in a few states, and anytime I have an opportunity to come back to New Orleans, I still consider that my other home. So anytime I have a chance to come back, I do. So I plan on doing a walk here sometime in the late summer, early fall. I'll keep you posted on it.
Yeah, definitely keep us posted. And speaking of all the work that you do for charity, as many listeners of this show or followers of you know, you published a book now about a year and a half ago, right? Bryant Acres.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of you that don't know, my mother published this book about our family history. My great grandfather, 7 generations back, was a free man of color sold himself into indentured servitude, and he went on to become one of the wealthiest landowners in the South. But before she could publish it, she came down with Alzheimer's. I promised her that I would publish the book for her, so I did. And all the money that I raise, I give to Alzheimer's research, and that's BryantAkers.com for anybody who wants to order the book. And just raising money for that, and it's been great.
Yeah, and most certainly, and you can't beat the cause. For listeners, Quinn posts links on how to purchase Bryant Akers, as well as participate in all of his charitable events, not only on his pages, but Kyle and I do it through ours as well. So definitely get in touch with any of the three of us, regarding your interest, and we'll kind of guide you through the process. Now you have another big thing coming up too. It's actually in the workings very much now. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I wrote a short film, and I'm producing it, and the name of the film is Just Bake Cookies. And a little bit about what that's about. So a young man struggles to transition from teenager to manhood. His mother passed away years before, so he's being raised by his grandfather, Pops. He gets into some trouble. Pops realizes that he needs reinforcement, so he's going to reach out to the local martial arts master. When he goes in to talk to his grandson, he can hear him in his room crying. So Pops goes in and he bakes some cookies. He comes in, he gives his grandson a plate of cookies that he just baked him. His grandson says, Pops, how come every time I get in trouble, you make me cookies? Because cookies make you realize that no matter how hard things get, they'll improve with time, but most of all, they make you realize that you're loved. So fast forward, the young man joins the martial arts school, becomes an MMA world champion. At the end, Pops, his grandfather, has developed Alzheimer's. So the young man goes to the Alzheimer's care facility to visit his grandfather, and they sit together at the end and they eat cookies together. And this film is extremely close to my family for a couple of reasons. My oldest son had some troubles growing up and trying to transition and things like that. And when he would get in trouble or he would have a hard time, I would bake him cookies. And he is actually directing the film.
Wow.
And this film is going to be used for two things. I'm going to use it as a vehicle to raise awareness and money for Alzheimer's. And then also, we're going to use it as a festival piece, the Cannes Film Festival, New York, LA, Connecticut, things like that, and just raise money and awareness for Alzheimer's. Now, I would love people to get involved. I've raised money for the actual film, but currently I'm raising money through Kickstarter for post-production. And you could go on there, and there's a menu of things. You could get a signed Quinn R jersey. You could become a producer. You could get a signed script by the cast. There are various things that you can get. So go on to Kickstarter and enter Just Bake Cookies, and every little bit helps. $5, $10, $100, whatever you want to donate, and help me make this film. And also, anybody who donates money, they will get a thank you and a mention on the credits on the film.
Wow.
So go on to Kickstarter, Just Bake Cookies, take a look, and it's just a great project, and I'm super excited about it.
Quinn, how can people who are in the business also help out? Or have you guys already gone through the casting and things to that nature?
Well, we actually we haven't signed any contracts, so I don't want to give away the farm too much, but we actually have a pretty big star for our female role, and we're currently casting. There's 4 main characters, and we're currently casting for Pops, for the main character, which is Quentin, who is the young man, and then for I think we have someone tentatively for the martial arts master. But anybody who wants to get involved, you can actually email me. Just email me at my name, QuinnEarly@Mac.com, and let me know that you have some interest, and we can talk about it. But we're pretty much getting there, and we plan to be in production by mid to late July. We're just working out the details now, but I'm really excited about it, and so it's a SAG-AFTRA project, so it's totally above board, and it's going to be exciting.
Awesome. I'm saying this for some selfish reasons because of my son being a thespian. But also, we want to be able to put the information on our websites as well. So if anybody who has any interest, we're going to put that out there. So what we need to do is just go to Kickstarter and find that page and be able to put the link on for the people, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll also send you guys the link. People can just click on it. It'll take you right to it. And you can look at the menu and just donate accordingly. And like I said, even if it's $5, $10, whatever it is, we will give you a thank you. So you can watch the film and then look for your thank you on the credits.
Awesome.
Look for your name.
That is truly tremendous. You've always done a great job of keeping your fans and your supporters involved. It's just kind of a testament to who you are. The question I wanted to ask you when you were talking about the film, though, you mentioned how it kind of hits near and dear to your heart for multiple reasons. But what made you? What was your motivation towards the MMA star angle?
Well, I'll tell you. So the film itself, the other producer on the film is a gentleman named Joe Box. And Joe has been a stunt coordinator and producer in Hollywood since 1985. And he has taken interest in my son. My son Cameron is also a stuntman in Hollywood, but he's also very talented behind the camera. He's got vision. He choreographs and films and edits and things like that. So Joe's idea was, he said, we need to put Cameron's name into the directing ring. And I was amazed by that, and I thought it was a great idea. So he said, why don't you write a script for Cameron to direct? So for me, writing this story was really poignant and powerful because it hit so close to home, not just for me, but for him also. So when he puts his directing hat on, he'll be able to, share this with the actors and push this story forward. And we're a family of martial artists, so it only made sense to throw the martial arts component in there. But it's primarily about family and looking out for one another and being there for each other when you're at not your best moment.
Yeah, that's great.
Now,
that's really good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that's great because we have to have that support from extended family members and associates to be able to help us on major projects like this. So,
absolutely.
Look, Quinn, I'm on the page. I pulled it up. I'll put it out there for the people, and I will contribute and help support the project.
Thank you so much. It's so appreciated. And it's going to be a great project. And I'd like to include you guys as much as you want to be included with it. And, I have some other things. I'm currently, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but, I wrote a full-length screenplay based on Brian Akers. And I'm talking actually to a couple of production companies about making this into a film. So I'm really excited about it. There's a lot going on. So it's just good times right now. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Sure. Are you still finding time? I know you've done a lot of stunt acting yourself in different movies and TV shows. Are you still doing that quite a bit?
I am. We just concluded, as a lot of you know, I doubled Shamar Moore on the TV show SWAT, and that ended in April. They'll be coming back in July, and I've been doing some other stuff. but also, as you know, I'm not exactly the youngest cat. So getting thrown through plate glass windows doesn't have quite the same appeal as it used to for me. So, I'm really enjoying the producing and the writing aspect of it. And, I'll do stunts for a few more years. I do still enjoy it. And what's really nice is I get to work with my son sometimes on shows. So that's always fun. But I eventually want to transition into more of being behind the camera and the writing and the producing and things like that.
I wanted to ask you too, and forgive me, I don't know how old Cameron is. Had you started a family when you were still in the NFL?
I did. Actually, I got married when I was 24, and by the time I was 25, we had Cameron. So a lot of times we'll be on set, and people will be like, "Oh, your brother," and I'm like, "That's not my brother, that's my son," because Cameron is he just had his 29th birthday. And, he's got a beard. He looks like a grown man, so it's pretty funny. But it's awesome working with him. He's an awesome stuntman, and like I said, he's extremely talented. You can check out his IMDb page. It's Cameron Early, and then also his Instagram is Stuntman Cam, C-A-M. And you can see his art and his choreography and some of the stuff he's worked on. And great kid, great talent, and he's going to be an up-and-comer for sure.
How difficult was it being a family man? And I do know that you're close to your family. How difficult was it when you were still a player in the NFL?
Oh, my God, it was amazing. It really was because, we just did it as a family, and, the best years were when my children were very small, toddlers, and I was playing for the Saints. And those were just good times. And what I always did was I would always leave work at home, no matter how hectic, how stressed, how bad of a day. I always left it in the locker room. And I would try to just go home and just family time. And, my wife was very good with those boys, and she was super supportive. And then in the off season, I would take over, and I would be Mr. Mom. And then that would give her an opportunity to pursue some work things. And so it just worked out really well, and I just wouldn't trade it for anything. It was amazing. I got two great sons who are both grown men now, and we're extremely close, and it's just a lot of fun.
That is terrific, and they're old enough to remember seeing Dad play. I know they were still little.
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly. Unfortunately, when I left and went to the Bills, at that point, Cameron was about 9, and Chance, my youngest, was about 6. And he was more concerned with the candy that was available in the locker room than really what was going on in the football field at the time, which is pretty funny. But he was an extremely talented athlete on his own right. He went to Reno, Nevada, played some football there. Decided that's not what he wanted to pursue, which was great, and just a lot of fun. But we had a lot of fun doing it as a family, and they both wished that they remembered more of me playing. But it was a lot of fun, good times.
Did the fact that you did have your boys and your family, did that make the decision a little bit easier to step away from the game when you said to yourself, with that big old size, okay, I guess it's time? Did that play a big factor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. After my 11th season, I was playing for the Bills, and it was time for, it was the fourth year. It was the third year of my 4-year contract, which I knew I'd only probably get 3 years out of. So after that year, they let me know that they weren't going to keep me around. And the fire was kind of out at that point. And that summer, training camp was going on. I was still at home. My kids were getting ready for school. And the phone rang, and it was Bill Parcells. And he was like, "Come on, we need you." Mm-hmm. And I looked at my wife, and she was like, "You better go get on that plane." And so I did, and that was the first and only season I played, and my family wasn't there with me. I mean, the kids were getting ready for school. They were older. So I went to New York by myself. And I'll tell you, that was the hardest 6 months of my life. And I found myself watching the scoreboard. I couldn't wait for the game to be over. And I knew at that point, you know, physically I could have still played, but my fire was out. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So I went through the season, and I just knew that it was time for me to be done.
That's extremely telling, actually. You know, especially as we watch some of the current Saints veterans. You know, of course, we know how close Drew Brees is with his wife and children, and you always wonder how much that plays a factor in you guys' decision once you get up to a certain age. Now, you had stepped away from the game. You know, we'll fast forward to the following year. Did you find yourself craving it or missing it a great deal? And if so, at when did it hit you the hardest? OTAs, training camp, regular season, any area like that?
I didn't miss it at all, and I'll tell you, I got just as much joy out of coaching both my son's Pop Warner teams as I did playing myself. I absolutely loved it. What was interesting, though, was every year when the season was over, I would take a month off, and come March 1st, I would start training again. Mm-hmm. So I knew I wasn't going to be playing. I knew that my career was over, but yet once March 1st came, I found myself getting up at 4 a.m. and going to the track and training while the sun was coming up like I was preparing for a season. And then I'd go to the gym, and I did that probably for about 2 months until one day, it was almost like that scene in Forrest Gump when he's running, and then all of a sudden he stops and he goes, "I'm pretty tired. I think I'll go home now." That's pretty much what happened to me. I was like, "What am I doing? What am I doing out here right now?" So, you know, that took some adjustment for me. I continued to work out, but you know, I modified it and I changed it, but I didn't really miss it. I was ready for the next phase.
Well, in one of the next stages of your life, obviously was, you know, the foray into acting and being a stuntman. How did that transition come about?
Well, the first few years, I really supported my wife. She became a real estate agent and was really successful with that. And I was pretty much Mr. Mom, did all their activities. And then I got a job with a sports nutrition company. I worked there for a year. And then I started doing some sports. And then I started coaching some high school football. And one day a buddy of mine called up, and he did really well in business and became a movie producer. And he said, "Hey, I want you to come be in my movie." And the next thing I know, I was hanging out the back of a truck shooting a machine gun. And then they paid me for it, and I was like, wow, I could do this for a living. And I became friends with the stunt coordinator, and he gave me the blueprint, and I've been doing stunts ever since.
Wow, cool. Let's jump on to the Saints now, and we're going to move you into the front office. We got done talking about the Cam Jordan extension a few minutes ago. The next big contract, the next big player contract for this team is Michael Thomas, who, of course, like you, plays wide receiver. Do you see the Saints? I think most of us expect Michael Thomas's next contract to make him the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Most people that follow his career or the Saints feel that he is deserving of that top-notch award. But do you see it coming from the New Orleans Saints?
I do. I think that he's a very unique player. I think that, you know, he could be one of the best players of all time, not just for the Saints, but in the game of football. I think that they need to cultivate him and nurture that. Now, what's going to be key is that, you know, knock on wood, he stays healthy and he continues to be as productive as he's been, which, you know, I absolutely believe that he will. I think that the Saints will take care of him. I think that he's just done nothing but prove himself time and time again. And if they don't, then I think that would be a huge mistake.
And I know I asked you earlier in the show if Sean Payton's not drafting of a wide receiver was indicative of how he felt, what he felt he already had on the team. By that same token and that same strategy, do you believe that that the fact that they didn't draft anyone, does that tell you that they feel fairly confident that they're going to be able to re-sign Mike?
Absolutely, I believe so. And again, I think that a lot of it is going to depend on how the season goes. Listen, when you're winning, everybody's happy, right? And everybody's doing well. And when you're not winning, then it's something else. So I think that as long as they're on the pace that they have been these past couple of years, and if they can get to some sort of championship game and get to the Super Bowl and do well, I see Michael Thomas. I see him as being the highest paid receiver in the league. And one of the big things that I like about him is that he's not a problem child. And listen, I'm a receiver, and I'll be the first one to say it, and that can be a diva position. And, he comes in and he works hard, and, he doesn't, make a scene, and I like that. I like that kind of player, and he just brings nothing but pluses to that organization. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't take care of him.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think he has potential all-time great written all over him right now. Now he's coming into his fourth year. In your fourth year, that was your first with New Orleans, I do believe.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about how you personally, people often forget. You were quick. You were, you could take the top off of the defense, but you were also a very physical receiver, and over the middle in those intermediate routes. How did you alter your game once you were in the league for a couple of years? Especially if at any point in time you felt you lost a step or anything like that.
Well, so when I came into the league, I was considered like the speed demon, right? Mm-hmm. And then in my second year, a couple of things happened. They fired everybody. They brought in Bobby Beathard. Bobby Beathard, for whatever reason, did not like me. I was on the top of his get rid of him list. And then I got hurt. I hurt my knee, and I had it wasn't total reconstruction. I had my knee scoped. And now all of a sudden I was this possession receiver. And so, there was a couple of things. I wanted to prove him wrong, and I wanted to prove that I could still run. I was still fast. But most importantly, my goal was to become a complete receiver. I wanted to be able to do it all. And so I always worked extremely hard at being a good blocker, being able to run great routes, having great hands, and being able to stretch the field also. And, I think I was able to accomplish that. And, I was very fortunate to be able to stay healthy. I think I went, I'm not sure the exact number, but 9 or 10 years or something without missing a game or something like that, which is pretty much unheard of. Mm-hmm. And a lot of luck involved. I worked extremely hard, and I, very thankful for that. And it was just a great ride all the way around, and I'm very thankful.
And again, we're certainly thankful for the time and the production that you gave us as a Saints receiver. I feel like I asked you this before, so if it's true, please forgive me. Who was the toughest guy that you played against as far as cover guy? Toughest guy to shake in coverage?
Eric Allen.
Wow.
You guys remember him? Yep.
Oh, very well, yeah.
Yep. Because I'll tell you why.
What made him sorry.
So Eric wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest guy. But Eric, you could tell that he spent hours upon hours in that classroom. And he studied. He knew if you had a wide split, you're running a quick slant. He knew if you had a tight split, you're running it out. And obviously I'm being simple about it, but he just knew tendencies, and he was a technician, and he was just a really solid football player. And he just gave me fits.
Oh, terrific. Now you played, and I know we've talked about this angle before. You played with two terrific quarterbacks. Three. I was always a Bobby Hebert fan too. But you played with Jim Everett on the back half of your Saints career, and then of course Jim Kelly in Buffalo. You had a great relationship with both quarterbacks. But what was kind of your go-to route? In other words, and I know you work closely with your quarterbacks. That unspoken thing that, we always hear the great quarterbacks and great wide receivers talk about, hey, all I needed to do was get a look from my quarterback and I knew I was going to run this route. Or if they got a look from me, they knew I was going to run that route. Did you have any go-tos with those two quarterbacks?
Yeah, well, for as far as Jim Kelly, unfortunately, I only got to play one season with him, which I'm very thankful for because he was a phenomenal quarterback. So in that scenario, can't really think back too much. I think I caught 60-plus balls with him the 1 year I did play with him. So I think we had a good rapport. He obviously would like to go to Andre Reed because they played together forever. They were like an old, pair of socks and shoes together. They just fit, But as far as Jim Everett goes, we had a phenomenal chemistry. And we worked extremely well together, and I'm just sorry that I didn't get to play my whole career with him because if I did, we both could be in the Hall of Fame right now. And one route that one ball he really threw well was the skinny post. I would start on the outside edge of the numbers, and by the time I got to the top of my route, I was on the inside edge of the numbers. I would basically just count my steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on that seventh step, I would have my hands up and I would turn and that ball would be on me. And, he would take a 5-step drop and it would just be, I would turn. And if I didn't get my hands up, that ball would hit me right in the mouth. And we would run that route time after time. And it didn't matter if there was a corner and a safety. He would just hit me right between the numbers. And that was just a great route between us, and I really enjoyed playing with him.
Wow. And now that you were describing it, and I'm sure Kyle was sitting there doing the same thing, it's almost like I can close my eyes and see those routes being run in 93, 94, 95 when you guys did put up those great numbers together.
Yeah.
Now, and I know that I speak for a lot of older Saints fans that followed the team then, and we all thought the same thing. When you came on and started to produce big, and Jim came on and started to air the ball out more, all of us Saints fans said, "Wow, finally!" But on the defensive side of the ball, we kind of touched on it earlier tonight. The great stars were kind of starting to go away, be traded, sign with other teams, things like that. Did you guys on the offensive side of the ball feel any kind of particular or genuine frustration that you weren't able to put the great defense that you had earlier in your career combined with the great offense that you had later in your Saints career?
Yeah, it was just timing. It was just timing. Can you imagine if we would have had the Dome Patrol and that defense with that passing game and that offense that we had my last couple of years there, we would have went, and listen, to me, we should have went that year. We won, the NFC West, and then we ended up losing to Philadelphia. We were beating them at halftime, 17-0, and then lost that game. There's no reason why we shouldn't have went to the Super Bowl that year. But, close only counts in, hand grenades and horseshoes, right? So, but yeah, it would have been nice if we could have timed that up to where we would have had a great offense and defense at the same time, but unfortunately it wasn't to be.
Now, earlier this week, I don't know how closely you guys, you and Kyle follow my articles through the Canal Street Chronicles, but in the off season, I have a series that I like to call Saints Triumphs and Saints Tragedies. The tragedies are a little bit painful to write about, But I wrote earlier this week about the epic 1980 loss, where Joe Montana had that big, huge comeback, against Archie Manning and the crew. And all of us are old enough to remember. We all know that the most bitter rivalry that the Saints have is Atlanta.
Right.
But you experienced the 49er hatred as well. You came on after Joe had left, but George Seifert, that great defense, and Steve Young and Jerry Rice were still there. Tell us how bitter that rivalry was with the 49ers, and did it compare with the Falcons?
Well, I'll tell you, no, I think you can. It's hard to beat the Falcons Saints rivalry because number one, it's mutual, and it's mutual between the fans. The frustrating thing back then with the 49ers was they were our rivals, but I don't think they believed we were their rivals. In their opinion, we were like, lint take off your shirt. Even when we were better than them, they still had their, you know what I mean? They still had this attitude. Yeah. And what would be frustrating is we'd be in the game and we might be beating them 17-0, 20-0, and they'd be telling each other, "Don't worry, like no big deal." You know what I mean? And so that was kind of frustrating. And then just the attitude of them thinking, it was almost like they were the upper crust, and we were like, Oliver Twist or somebody. You know what I mean? Like, so that was a frustration there. But yeah, you can't beat the Saints Falcons rivalry.
Quinn, and I remember those games so vividly, man. The thing about they just had confidence, right? It's kind of what you see with the Patriots as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how far we're down. We just believe we can get back into this game. And you can see that with the Warriors in basketball. No matter how far we're down, you give Stephen and Clay a chance to shoot a few shots, they believe they can get back into the game. So
absolutely.
From that standpoint, I think that persona or the mental makeup these guys have are championship mentality, right?
Yes, there's a lot to be said for that.
Exactly. So I want to ask a different question. And Bob, I'm sorry if I'm diverging from you.
Oh, you're good.
Where you going? Who else other than we see in Patriots land do you see that capability of having that type of mentality in the National Football League?
Oh, wow. I definitely think the Patriots, to me, are in a league of their own when it comes to that. And that comes from the top down. I think that Bill Belichick, he actually was the defense coordinator when I played for the Jets, so I got to work with him a little bit. But, the guy's a genius. And he's developed, he's a Bill Parcells protege. I think he does things a little bit differently, but he developed a formula that works. Players are all in line. It does it from the top to the bottom. You don't see guys knocking over Gatorade cans, and there's a culture, in other words, which I think keeps the unit tight. It's almost like it's the Marines, right? Everybody has a job to do, and everybody's in line, and everybody executes. And I think that if other teams could duplicate that, which to me is next to impossible to do, then there would be more of that going on. But they're kind of in a league of their own, I think, when it comes to that, with regards to the NFL.
Yeah, and I was having a debate one time with a guy, and I was telling him, okay, so the NOLA no-call play happened, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The Saints still could have defended well enough to stop the Rams from coming down and scoring, with the 3 points. And we could have also done our due in overtime as well. So I'm thinking, where do we get over that hump? Where you're not whining and complaining, but you're putting yourself in position, okay, the bad stuff happened, Now, what's the next step for us to do? What do we need to do next? And you rarely see that in sports where guys can be able to say, okay, I'm knocked down or we got hit pretty hard, but we still believe we could come back and win this. You know?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like I said earlier in the call, is you can't leave it up to the refs. If you think about the past 2 years, it all came down to like the very end of the game, and there's like one or two plays on the line that decide it and all this other stuff. You know, you can't really leave it to one or two plays, and you can't leave it to the refs. You have to make it so that it's not close. Like, we got this.
Right.
Boom.
Right. We have to take ownership and control our own destiny.
Absolutely. Control your own destiny. Now, I don't blame the Saints fans for complaining about that because that was a crappy call. I mean, I was out of my seat. Like, what are you kidding me? But again, can't leave it to the refs, man, because people are human. There's human error. Yeah. And again, you have to develop somewhat that culture, like we talked about, of no, we're going to get there no matter what, and not wait for anybody else to do it. Just go get it. And that's across the board at every position.
Now, Quinn, and I realize what you're saying, and I couldn't agree more. But at the same time, you're human. So when a heartbreak like that occurs, and you mentioned the Philadelphia playoff loss that you guys went through, and then of course Atlanta at home the year before. How do you recover from that?
Oh, you recover. It's upsetting, it's painful, and you go through a grieving process, but it doesn't last that long as a player because you realize that in this game, things happen, but the most important thing is that you come out healthy. You have the love and the support of your family and friends, and then there's more work to be done. It's time to roll your sleeves up and get back in it. And as an athlete, you've been doing that since elementary school. And I guarantee you that JV game when you made a bad play or your team lost the championship hurt just as bad at that point as it did when you're in the NFL. And by then you've learned how to navigate through that kind of heartbreak. I think when it comes, when it's being looked at through the fans' eyes, I think it's a little bit different of a scenario. You love your team so much and you want them to do well and you hurt for them. But as a fan, we wanted it, we needed it, we were so close. So I think there's just a little bit of different of a dynamic. But as a player, you hurt, you grieve, and then you get over it and you keep plugging along because there's always next year.
Does it hurt more when you're a younger player, like you were in 91, 92, or when you get a little bit closer to the end of your career, say, your 96 playoff loss with Buffalo? Which stings more?
Nah, they all hurt. they all hurt. And I'll tell you, people ask me all the time, what's the one, do you have any regrets about your career? And the regret that I have is that I didn't have an opportunity. Accolades and all that stuff is fine, but not being able to say that I played in the Super Bowl is, because that's everybody's goal, right? That's what you're there for. So when you lose those playoff games, it doesn't matter if it's your rookie year or if it's your last year. When you lose, it hurts.
Awesome. Well, Quinn, let the people know again how they can be able to help you guys out with this Kickstarter project.
Yeah, so go to Kickstarter and type in Just Bake Cookies. It's my short film, which I'm going to use to raise awareness and money for Alzheimer's. I'll travel the country, do some speaking engagements, and then also we're going to use it as a festival piece. So if you guys want to be a part of the project and get your name in the credits, go to Kickstarter, put in Just Bake Cookies, and again, there's also a menu. There's prizes for the money that you put in, things like a signed script by the cast, written by me, If you put in enough money, you'll get an executive producer credit or a full producer credit. There's football jerseys that I'll sign and I'll send to people. So there's all kinds of things. Just go through the menu. But again, it's Kickstarter. Put in Just Baked Cookies and donate however much you want to donate, and help us get this film made. And we'll have a lot of fun with it. And it's just a worthwhile project. Raise money for Alzheimer's.
Awesome, and I will be sending you an email as well.
Okay, very good.
But guys, that's a great thing to do. I know my family has been affected by Alzheimer's as well, with my mother as well as my uncle having Alzheimer's. Just support it. We have more and more people who are being diagnosed daily in America at a rapid pace as well. So we just have to be aware and keep our mentals, our bodies well, our minds well, as far as possible, but also care about the extended families around you who are being affected by this deadly and horrible disease. Okay?
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks, Quinn.
Absolutely. We'll be talking to you guys soon. Thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, Quinn.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, man. That's awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Quinn Early. Not only a favorite of ours, as a player when he was in New Orleans, but such a great guy, and he really does tireless work, for the Alzheimer's charity and so many other events. I don't know about you, Kyle. I'm humbled that he allows us, to be a part of this and help out in promoting it, because it just does tremendous work.
Yeah, but look, you have to have that heart, and sometimes, unfortunately, it takes tragedies to spark a person's passions that helps hundreds or thousands more of people in the world, and I know I've done the Alzheimer's walk and raised money for the foundation, and I continue to this day to raise money, especially on my last birthday. I did it as well. So, I mean, it's a part of families, if it's cancer, if it's something that's going to drive you to do good for your fellow better man out there, do it, because there are so many people who just stand by the sidelines and say, oh, that's a shame, and just say that and do not act. So I applaud him for the action, and as well as many, many others out there in the world.
Yeah, and not only Quinn, but a number of other guests that we've had on the show with different charitable causes. Let's be real. There are only 24 hours in a day, so it is difficult to get involved. But Quinn and these other guys, they give us the opportunity to get involved, be it through a donation of money, through a donation of time, or just kind of promoting their project to other friends, family members of your particular community. And like I said, that's where it's an honor to be part of the process.
Definitely. Well, Bob, let's kind of give before wrapping up the show, give the fans some insight. What's been happening with the minicamp for the New Orleans Saints?
Well, I mean, they're bringing people in and out. Richard Matthew was given a tryout at wide receiver yesterday, and I heard, unfortunately not able to be there, but I heard, that he made some very nice catches. At Taysom Hill, let's keep in mind, folks, these aren't full pads or anything like that, or certainly live game action. But Taysom Hill has been looking very sharp, from what I understand. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson continues to impress, the rookie fourth-round draft choice, and his slot role. Some other guys have been sitting out due to minor injuries. Obviously, precaution. You don't want to You don't want to increase the severity of that injury at any time, obviously, but especially at this point of the off season. So I think what we're seeing, we're seeing the Saints kind of flex their muscle as far as depth goes. And we kind of thought, as we saw these free agents being signed and we saw the draft picks being made, we thought that the Saints were going to be an even deeper team in 2019 than they were in 2018. I kind of think that that's what we're seeing right now. And look, I know you feel the same way I do at this point. When people ask me, well, what are you looking for in OTAs or early in training camp? My first word is always one thing: health. No injuries. Let's avoid injuries. We know what this team has on paper, not only on paper, but on the field, because they've proven it over the last 2 years. And Quinn said so himself. You have to put this team in the top 2 or 3 of the NFL leading coming into the season as top 2 or 3 Super Bowl contenders, and there's no reason to believe otherwise. So as we do head towards training camp, outside of health, I am keeping an eye on what these new guys, what the new free agents, what the new draft choices, and some of the other guys that kind of had an off year in 2018. I want to see them sort of step up to the plate as well.
Yeah, and I'm kind of interested also because the Saints brought in Kayvon Webster at cornerback, and he's a vet. He's been with with the Texans. He's been with the Rams, the Broncos. What is that saying about Ken Crawley? What is that saying about Patrick Robinson? So the more depth, look, Mold VP used to say the same thing. Look, I'm always interviewing for your replacement. Okay.
Yep.
And in football, it's the same thing. And a lot of guys don't really understand that as a fan. Oh, we already have this person. Why get someone else? Competition brings out the best in people. And also knowing that you have somebody who could be able to take your spot, you're going to do your best. You should do your best.
Yep.
And you want the guys who are going to be ready and willing to take that challenge to be pushed. So I think that only helps us out. And look, it's football, man. Injuries are a part of the whole process. And if you get the best talent who are maybe a notch below somebody else or whatever, if that person goes down, you're not far down in the process where you have guys who are like 2 or 3 notches below, right? We can't go through seasons like this any longer. If we have a guy go down, let's make sure we have somebody who's right there who can start effectively.
And Kayvon Webster is a perfect example of that. He's a terrific special teams player, was a key member of the Denver Broncos outstanding secondary when they won their Super Bowl 50 championship, and was a starter for the Rams in 2016, 2017, excuse me, before he went down with an Achilles injury. So he is a capable defensive back as long as that wheel of his is healthy. So you asked what that meant for Ken Crawley. Ken Crawley, P.J. Williams, Patrick Robinson. I think Robinson out of those 3 is probably the safest. But they are all going to have to play some very good football just to make this roster. Same with Justin Hardy at cornerback, because we all expect Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to play more of a safety role, but to step in on the sub packages and take on a slot corner role, an area where the Saints struggled quite a bit last season after Robinson went down. P.J. Williams played well down the stretch, but he still had his struggles. So like you said, I mean, a signing like Kayvon Webster, a veteran, who is still pretty close, one would think anyway, pretty close to the peak of his career. Marcus Sherrills, terrific punt returner, kick returner, so we hope that he can give the team a boost in that area, but he's going to compete in that corner spot as well. The back half of this roster has got to be ready to play, like you said, Kyle, because we've seen too many times in recent years where the Saints were depleted at one position or another as they headed into a vital stretch of the season. So depth is the ultimate concern.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully, I know Barry is going to have some more reports on minicamp, and I know John is out there for you guys to put some reports out for Canal Street Chronicles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other tidbits before we get off the air?
No, I mean, as always, Quinn Early was such a spectacular guest, and just sort of wowed us all. Not only with his own playing experience and off the field experiences, but he has such a great analysis on what's going on now with this team and throughout the NFL. We covered how important the Cam Jordan extension was, and I hope Quinn is right. I hope the next job that this front office gets done is inking Michael Thomas. And outside of that is just excitement through the rest of the summer. Definitely looking forward to it.
Definitely, man. All right, Bobo, tell everybody how they can follow you on the World Wide Web.
Well, before I do, if you don't mind, for 3 consecutive days, I have had an event, that's kind of near and dear to my heart. So if I may, yesterday was I have 2 younger brothers, but yesterday was my younger brother Jeff's birthday. So happy birthday, Mr. Rose, if you are listening.
Happy birthday.
Today, and I know I'm taking a step out of anonymity, but I know this man well, and I know he doesn't mind. For those that know me very well, know that I am a recovering alcoholic. God willing, if I make it to September 3rd, I will be sober for 12 years. But my sponsor, awesome. I will just call him Chuck T. My sponsor, mentor, and a very good friend of mine is 40 years sober today.
Wow.
So that's huge. Yeah. That is huge, and congratulations to you, Chuck, if you're listening.
Wow.
And then tomorrow, my younger daughter, I have 2 daughters, and Little Master Will, as most people know. My younger daughter, Isabella, turns 14. I know she's in the next room, so happy birthday, Isabella.
Happy birthday.
But as far as following me, I can be followed on Facebook, Bob Rose, or Twitter at BobbyR2613. The majority of my writings is through the Canal Street Chronicles, which I post on my personal pages, as well as Canal Street Chronicles on Facebook and at Saints CSC on Twitter. And as most of you know who listen to the show, we have a very active and very outstanding Bayou Blitz Facebook page. So if you're not a member of that yet, send Kyle or I or one of the members a join request, and promise you'll get in and you'll have a load of fun. I think we're fun and informative both. And recently, within the last couple of weeks, I finally got around to starting a Bayou Blitz Twitter page, which is at Bayou Blitz 412. So we don't have a whole lot of followers yet. Kind of getting caught up as far as posting replays of some of our old shows, Kyle. But send us a follow at the Bayou Blitz both Facebook page and Twitter page. And as always, and I know you feel the same way, we appreciate and love all you guys for the support that you've given us. You've made this a load of fun. And hopefully we're doing all right. But if not, we'd love to hear your suggestions on how we can better this product for you. This is your show as much as it is ours.
Yep. Look, Bob and the family, happy birthdays, and the sobriety, 40 years, that's remarkable. And we just pray that everything continues to go well in everyone's life. Be with the family of Derek Stevens, the professor, and his family. Yep. The summer was kind of difficult for them. Be with them. But most of all, guys, just be safe out there in Louisiana or wherever you are. I know supporting the New Orleans Saints is the main reason why you listen to us and support. But let's go ahead and support one another. There are a lot of good activities that will be going on this summer, but make sure you be safe and make sure you be smart as well. Okay. All right. You can follow the Saints News Network at saintsnewsnetwork.com, where you can be able to read all of Barry Hurst's featured articles and columns on the New Orleans Saints. You can also follow us at Saints News on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. This is Kyle T. Mosley of the Saints News Network with Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz and the Canal Street Chronicles. Bobo, thank you. Let's have a good one next week.
Yep.
And next week, guys, we may be on, and Bob, forgot to tell you, we may have some programming changes where we may be on either an hour later or the following day on Thursday. So, but I will let you know, and we will let you know with the promos. All right, this is Kyle T. Bob, have a good evening. We'll talk. Saints fans, stay classy. Who dat? Take care. Bye.
Yeah.